The Galactic Order's arrogance. The Galactic Council had long since classified humanity as a Category 4 primitive species, a minor race of limited intelligence, barely capable of interstellar travel, possessing neither the biological enhancements of the Krell Dominion nor the warforged might of the Kroell Imperium. To the greater civilizations of the galaxy, Earth was little more than a curiosity, an outpost of organic creatures that had clawed their way into space but would never truly matter. And when the Council convened to discuss the fate of the Terran question, the decision was unanimous. They will never amount to anything, scoffed Chancellor Vrexorin, his elongated form coiled in disdain. Their sciences are crude, their weapons laughable. Their very biology is riddled with inefficiencies. A low rumble of amusement spread through the chamber. The representatives of 100 empires agreed, humanity was an irrelevant anomaly. A race doomed to fade into obscurity. Only one voice dared to rise in opposition. They are adaptable, said High Strategist Zelvar of the Raltheran. Unlike his peers, he had studied the Terrans more closely than most. They learn at an alarming rate. They are reckless, unpredictable. If left unchecked. Vrexorin cut him off with a dismissive wave. If they were capable of anything beyond their own self-destruction, we would have seen it by now. The chamber burst into laughter. And so the fate of Earth was sealed. The Council would allow the Terrans to exist only so long as they posed no threat. Any advancement beyond their place would be met with immediate intervention. But what none of them realized, what no intelligence in the galaxy could have predicted, was that humanity had already created something that would change the fate of the universe. And his name was Elias Kane. The man who would change everything. Deep beneath the icy surface of Titan, hidden from the watchful eyes of the Council, a secret project was underway. Elias Kane stood at the heart of it. He wasn't a soldier. Wasn't a politician. He was an engineer. And he had built something impossible. Around him, the underground laboratory hummed with quiet energy. Terminals glowed with calculations that defied known physics. Machinery pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly light. And at the center of it all, the machine. A construct of shifting matter and exotic energies, it pulsed like a living thing, warping the very space around it. Kane had spent the last 10 years designing it. A decade of obsession, of trial and error, of countless failures. But now, as he stood before it, he knew. This was the answer. The culmination of everything humanity had fought for. His lead scientist, Aisha Voss, stood beside him, her expression equal parts awe and terror. "This goes beyond anything we've ever attempted," she whispered. "If it works." Kane didn't take his eyes off the machine. "It will work." She exhaled sharply. "And if the Council finds out?" "They already think we're nothing," Kane said. His voice was calm, steady. "Let's keep it that way. Until it's too late for them to stop us." Aisha hesitated. Then finally she nodded. "Then let's change the universe." The first test. The moment of truth had arrived. The machine was ready. Kane and Aisha stood in the control room, monitoring its energy readings. The lab's reinforced walls vibrated as the power levels surged, distorting reality in ways that made the human mind struggle to comprehend. Kane took a deep breath. "Initiate the test." Aisha's fingers danced across the controls. The machine awoke. For a split second nothing happened. Then reality cracked. A pulse of energy rippled through space-time, bending the laws of physics like wet paper. Instruments overloaded. Light twisted into impossible colors. The very fabric of existence shuddered. And then, in the void before them, a rift opened. A hole in the universe. Not just a tear in space but something more, a fracture in causality itself. Aisha gasped. "Kane, do you realize what we've done?" He stared into the rift, his mind racing. He had theorized about this possibility, but to see it in action. This wasn't just a weapon. This wasn't just technology. This was the fundamental rewriting of reality. A power beyond anything the galaxy had ever known. A power that would make humanity unstoppable. And as Kane gazed into the abyss, a slow, chilling smile spread across his face. "They mocked us," he murmured. "They underestimated us." His grip on the console tightened. "Now they'll learn what happens when you push humanity too far." The first contact. The test had worked. But its effects had not gone unnoticed. In the void between star systems, a Raltheran scout ship had detected the anomaly. Its crew, trained to identify any deviations from the norm, had immediately flagged the event as an impossibility. And impossibilities required immediate action. The Council would be informed. And humanity would face its reckoning. But Elias Kane was ready. And by the time the council realized the truth, by the time they understood the magnitude of what had been created, it would already be too late. The Galactic Council had been many things across its millennia of dominance: arrogant, cruel, indifferent, but never afraid. That changed the moment they received the transmission from Ralthran space. High Chancellor Vrexorin read the report once. Then again. Then a third time. It did not change. A Category 4 species, the lowest classification in the hierarchy, had created something that should not exist. The energy signature detected by the Ralthran scout ship defied every law of physics the Council understood. More than that, it rewrote them. It was not merely a weapon. It was something else. And it came from Earth. A deep silence filled the Council chamber. The gathered representatives of 100 species had seen the report, but none dared speak first. Finally, Supreme Strategist Korvac of the Krell Dominion leaned forward, his clawed fingers tapping against the stone table. "We should have eradicated them when we had the chance." His voice was cold. "This mistake must be corrected immediately." "They are insignificant," barked another counselor. "What can a handful of primitive beings do against the might of the Council?" Vrexorin's gaze was unreadable. He had ruled long enough to recognize danger before it became inevitable. "Summon the Exterminatus fleet," he ordered. "Earth dies before it becomes a problem." The chamber fell into chaos. Some agreed instantly, others hesitated. But the decision had been made. Humanity was to be erased. The betrayal. Aisha Voss stood frozen in the Titan research facility, reading the intercepted Council transmission. Her stomach twisted into knots. "They're coming," she whispered. Elias Kane's gaze was calm, unwavering. He took the datapad from her hands, scanning the message with practiced efficiency. "So they finally noticed," he murmured. "Took them long enough." Aisha stared at him. "This isn't a joke, Kane. The Exterminatus fleet is moving. They won't negotiate. They won't hesitate. They're going to wipe out Earth, everyone we know." "I know." His lack of panic made her uneasy. Aisha grabbed his arm. "We need to run. Hide the machine. We're not ready to fight." Kane turned to her. And for the first time she saw it. Not fear. Not anger. Something far more terrifying. Conviction. "We're not running." Aisha's breath caught. "Kane. This is why we built the machine." His voice was steady. "This is the moment we prove that humanity is more than what they think." Aisha shook her head. "You don't understand. We don't have a fleet. We don't have armies. We have one machine. That's all we need." Aisha felt her pulse hammering. He believed it. And worse, she was beginning to believe it too. The war begins. The Exterminatus fleet arrived in the Sol system in perfect formation. 3,000 warships, each one designed to obliterate planets. At its center loomed the dreadnought Tyrannis, a vessel the size of Earth's moon. It had been forged for one purpose: to end civilizations. Its weapons powered up, targeting Earth. On board, Grand Marshal Trelvon, commander of the fleet, observed his tactical display. "This will be over in moments," he said, his mandibles clicking in satisfaction. "Fire the planetary disruptors." His weapons officer hesitated. "Sir, there's an anomaly." Trelvon frowned. "Explain." The officer gestured to the viewport. "That." Trelvon turned. And for the first time he felt fear. Because there, standing in the void of space, without a ship, without armor, was a man. Elias Kane. The birth of a god. Kane should not have been able to exist in open space. And yet he did. His body was wrapped in an aura of shifting, crackling light. The machine's power coursing through him, warping reality around his very presence. He raised a hand. And space bent. The Tyrannis shuddered. Inside, alarms blared. Gravity distortions detected. Impossible, there's no mass signature. And then the first ship collapsed. Not exploded. Not damaged. Collapsed. Its form twisted into itself, crushed by forces that had no name. 1,000 crew members vanished as their existence was rewritten in an instant. Trelvon stumbled backward. This is a trick." Kane gazed at him. No words. No emotion. Just judgment. And then he clenched his fist. The Tyrannis, the greatest warship in the galaxy, ceased to be. The void rippled. The Council had come to destroy humanity. Instead, they had brought humanity's ascension. Elias Kane was no longer bound by the laws of physics. He was the law. And he had just declared war on the galaxy. The galaxy trembles. The destruction of the Exterminatus fleet should have been impossible. Thousands of warships. Millions of soldiers. the most powerful armada the Galactic Council had ever assembled. And yet, in mere seconds it was gone. Not in flames, not in ruin, but unmade, vanished from existence. Word of the event spread faster than light itself. Across the galaxy, empires, dominions and warlords watched in horror as the impossible was confirmed. A single human, a primitive, a Category 4 species, had turned the greatest fleet in history into nothingness. And then, in a single message broadcast across the stars, Elias Kane declared the unthinkable. Your time is over. You mocked us. You underestimated us. Now you will kneel. The council, once unshakable in its arrogance, panicked. Because in that moment they understood. They had created their own destruction. The hunt for Kane. The council convened in an emergency session, their vast chamber now a den of fear and desperation. This cannot be allowed to continue. Chancellor Vrexoran's voice trembled. He had never known fear before now. The Terran must be found and destroyed, growled Supreme Strategist Korvac. We cannot allow him to exist. But High Strategist Zelvar, the only one who had warned them about humanity before, shook his head. His red eyes gleamed with cold understanding. We cannot destroy him, he said. Not anymore. Vrexoran turned on him, his serpentine eyes narrowing. Then what do you propose? Pause. Then, in a whisper filled with dread. We beg. A silence so deep it felt like the void itself filled the chamber. The council had never begged for anything. But then again, nothing like Elias Kane had ever existed. The Revenant of Titan. Far from the chaos on Titan, Aisha Voss watched as Elias Kane returned. He stepped through the research facility's airlock without a suit, his body still flickering with the impossible energy of the machine. His eyes, once just those of an engineer, a scientist, now held the infinite. You saw it, didn't you? Aisha whispered. Kane nodded. They were nothing, he said. His voice was calm, distant, inhuman. Aisha stepped closer. Kane, what are you? He turned to her and for a moment the old Elias flickered back. I'm still me, he said softly. But I'm also something more. Aisha swallowed. She had seen the footage. He had stood in the cold abyss of space with no armor, no ship, and he had rewritten the universe with a thought. The man she had known for years was now something beyond comprehension. But even more terrifying? He wasn't done. The fall of the Council's stronghold. The Galactic Council's homeworld, Vastari Prime, had never been touched by war. It was the heart of civilization, the center of power. Its defenses were the most impenetrable in existence. And yet they meant nothing now. The sky ripped apart as Elias Kane arrived, not on a ship, not as part of an invading army, but alone. Council forces scrambled to respond. War fleets mobilized, planetary shields activated, millions of soldiers prepared to fight. But how do you fight something that does not obey the laws of reality? Kane raised a hand. The planetary shields dissolved. The war fleets crumpled into singularities. Millions of soldiers were erased from time itself. And then, finally, Kane descended onto the Council's central chamber. The most powerful beings in the universe, groveling at his feet. You wanted to erase humanity, Kane said, his voice echoing through the fabric of existence itself. Vrexoran trembled. Please, have mercy. For a moment, Kane said nothing. Then he smiled. I will. Vrexoran exhaled in relief. Then Kane whispered. But you will never forget what humanity is. Reality shattered. And Vastari Prime ceased to exist. The end of the old order. The destruction of Vastari Prime was not just the fall of a planet. It was the fall of the old universe. The Galactic Council was gone. Their fleets? Scattered. Their power? Broken. Across the galaxy, species that had once mocked Earth bowed. Not out of respect, but out of terror. Elias Kane had rewritten the laws of reality. And now he would reshape the galaxy in humanity's image. The galaxy kneels. The Galactic Council was no more. Vastari Prime, once the beating heart of civilization, was gone, not destroyed but erased from existence. No ruins. No remains. Not even the dust of its foundations. It had never been. And the galaxy trembled beneath the weight of a new reality. Elias Kane was no longer a man. He was a force. A being who could rewrite the laws of existence with a thought. A mortal who had become a god. And now, all of creation awaited his next move. The species who had once mocked Earth, who had belittled its people, scorned its achievements, and sought to erase it from history, now groveled for mercy. Every empire, every dominion, Every warlord in the stars sent envoys, bearing gifts and pleas for peace. But the most powerful among them, the great Krell Dominion, the Ralthorn Strategium, the Ashkari war clans, knelt before one human, before the future of all things, before Elias Kane. The immortal throne. Titan had once been nothing more than an outpost, a research facility built in the shadows, hidden away from prying eyes. Now, it was the new center of the universe. The halls of the Titan facility had expanded, stretching into vast corridors of gleaming black metal, lined with technology that no civilization could comprehend. And at its heart, the machine pulsed with cosmic power. Aisha Voss stood in the throne chamber, staring at the being she had once called her friend. He sat on a structure of shifting energy and impossible geometry, neither alive nor mechanical, a throne crafted from the very fabric of existence. He had not spoken in weeks. Not in words at least, but the galaxy still heard him. Every mind across every star system felt his presence. His will had become law. Aisha swallowed, stepping forward. "Kane," she whispered. His eyes opened. The universe shuddered. "What is it?" His voice echoed in the vast chamber, not spoken but felt. Aisha's hands trembled. She had followed him from the beginning. She had believed in him when no one else had. But now she saw something else. "You've won," she said. They kneel. "The council is gone. The war is over." Kane stared at her. She forced herself to continue. "Come back," she pleaded. "Come back to who you were." A silence filled the chamber, deeper than the void between stars. Then Kane rose from his throne. And reality bent. The final choice. Aisha felt weightless, lifted from the ground as Kane stepped closer. His presence was overwhelming, his aura a storm of cosmic force. She saw all of existence reflected in his gaze, worlds being born, stars dying, time unraveling. She saw what he had become. A god. No, something beyond even that. She could barely breathe. And then, he raised a hand. A choice. A single moment that would define everything. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Elias Kane hesitated. His fingers trembled. His expression flickered, a shadow of the man he had once been. Aisha reached out, placing her hand against his chest. "You're still human," she whispered. Kane closed his eyes. And the galaxy held its breath. The dawn of a new era. When Elias Kane opened his eyes, the storm was gone. The machine, the source of his power, began to fade, its energy dissipating into the void. Across the universe, civilizations felt a shift. The presence that had dominated existence for weeks diminished. And in its place, something new was born. Not a god, not a tyrant, but a leader, a human. And so, the universe changed forever. The old ways were gone. The empires that had once ruled now served a greater purpose, not as conquerors but as builders. And at the center of it all, on the world where it had begun, Elias Kane stood. No longer a force of destruction, but a force of creation. Aisha stood beside him, watching as the first embassies arrived on Titan. "You could have taken everything," she murmured. Kane smiled, a real human smile. "I did," he said. "Now I'm giving it back." And thus, the age of humanity ascendant began. The last message. Across the universe, as new alliances were forged, one final message was broadcast from Titan. Not a threat, not a command, but an invitation. We were nothing. We were mocked, scorned, dismissed. And yet here we stand. Now we offer you a choice: stand with us, or be left behind. Because humanity is no longer just a species. We are the future. And across the stars, the last skeptics fell silent. For they knew beyond any doubt, humanity had risen, and they would never fall again. Subscribe to the Void Narratives for more epic sci-fi stories.